So I think we've established that polarization is something I get pretty excited about. So let's think about some applications for polarization and places you might see it. Do go see the YouTube video about the toilet in Switzerland. It's got liquid crystal, which is just some polymers that are in random orientations, but when you put a voltage on them, it causes them all to line up. And when they line up, they form a polarizing screen. So that's interesting. The walls of this toilet are made of liquid crystal. So it's got a polarizing sheet that's static. It's always there because it's always on because it's just a sheet. But then there's a layer of liquid crystal that's oriented with its polarization axis crossed to it. So it's right here on a street corner. You can go into it and it's perfectly transparent. And so people can see you in there and you can see out. But when you press the privacy button, it energizes the liquid crystals, forms a cross polarizer, and now it becomes opaque and you can't see through it. Given my track history with technology, I will not be trusting that simple circuit not to fail while I'm using that facility. There are other places that liquid crystals can be pretty useful. When we talk about an LCD screen that uses a liquid crystal, just like in your calculator or in your digital devices. So the dumb LCDs in your calculator, look at them really closely. So I'm assuming you've got a black and white calculator and there's like that kind of gray background. And you see the cell, and it turns out that the cell, when it's turned on, appears to be floating a little bit above that background. So you might have to get in there and look at it really closely. There is a slight offset where the LCD layer sits above just the background. And it's not backlit. What happens is light comes in, bounces off the back, and then comes out, and that's what you see. But it's got a permanently polarizing screen up here. It's got another one that's crossed with the liquid crystal, and what you're really seeing is a shadow. Like the liquid crystal turns on, and now the light can't bounce in and bounce back out. So it actually doesn't light up the cells in the LCD. It actually turns them off so that you can't see through them. This would be an interesting technology to colorize. So if we wanted to make an LCD monitor or an LCD screen, the first thing I need is a backlight. So we might just use a mercury lamp or something like that to produce light that's unpolarized. Okay, so this will be our white light that comes out. We've established that our eyes see pretty much three colors, red, green, and blue, because there's three cone cells in the eye. So it's reasonable for us to stain these three with just a color filter. So when the light passes through, it picks up those colors. So here's our RGB, so I need a red, I've got a green, and I guess I need a blue. And this can just be as simple as, like plastic or something that's stained with a color. So it filters out the other colors and only gives us R, G, and B. Let's say that my goal, I want a red pixel. So now we need to have some kind of set of LCDs that can be set up with voltages that the graphics card and the monitor and all the other hardware can control. So we know the coordinates in our matrix of cells, which one we want to turn on and off. I want red to go through, so I'm going to leave that one untampered, but then turn these other ones on. So we've energized green and blue. And what comes out, these hit this, the unpolarized light is now polarized, and it picks on that orientation. And same for blue. Half of the intensity is cut out, goes through there. And red, of course, is not affected because that cell is not energized, it passes through. The last thing we should do is make a static polarizing screen on the outside. So here's just a film that might laminate the monitor. We'll put it in that orientation, and now when the red sees it, it only comes out this way. When the green sees it, it's crossed, so we get nothing. And when the blue sees it, it's crossed, we get nothing. And our eye is over here looking at this cell, and it looks red. Now, of course, you can deal with the other colors in a similar way, right? We can either have red, green, blue. We have combinations, right? So you might activate an R and a B at the same time, and then get, you know, some composite color that comes out. I will entirely leave that up to the graphics card and all the other processors to deal with the servos of where all these signals go, and relative intensities and things like that to get the, you know, 16 million colors or 24 million colors. Okay, so that is really, in a sense, how these screens work. In the lab, there should be video of these things, so we'll look at them under polarizers at different angles. And most of these, if you look at them at the wrong angle, say this angle crossed, it'll black out the entire screen. Some devices, like my iPhone, I complain a lot about Apple, but this is one of the parts that I'm not terribly disappointed with. My best guess is that their engineers have set all the color axes on, or all the color cells on different axes. So they're not all lined up the same way. And the effect of that is when you look at them through a polarizer, if you happen to be anti-aligned or crossed with this cell, you can still see two of the other colors. It doesn't look nice. You're not going to appreciate art, but you can at least read what might be on a screen, even if the color information is garbled. So this is an easy, quick, and dirty fix to take the polarization axes and keep them all 120 degrees apart, so that at worst, you cancel out only one of the three colors, but you can still read the screen. I run into this problem at gas stations frequently because the LCDs just happen to be lined up with my polarizing sunglasses. So I always have to kind of tilt my head to the side a little bit to be able to see through it and read the display. Okay, kind of a hard cut to come back and insert something that we forgot. Go look on the internet about these LCD monitors. I've seen some kind of DIY hacks where people would take out the static polarizer from their monitors and then put their monitor back together. And anyone who tries to use it would only see either kind of a gray or a purplish, just noise from all of these three colors that come in all at once. You might say, well, why would anyone do that? Because then they could use polarizing sunglasses at the same orientation, and they've turned it into a privacy screen. The ones I use at the bank aren't quite like this. Instead, they're just a shutter that's got these blades, so that when the screen is behind it, you have to be looking directly to see the light. If you're off at an angle, it gets blocked by these shutters and you can't see. So privacy screens at like banks and stuff work that way, but if you wanted to do kind of a fun one at home, just rip out the polarizing screen in the monitor, and then instead of having it on the device, put it here on the eye. That way you can just have kind of your own glasses that allows you to read the screen, but nobody else can unless they know what the trick is and have their own polarizers calibrated to the same orientation angle for them to be able to see. So that's kind of a cool thing, and maybe we can find some on the internet to show. So how about another interesting case? TV movies were really popular back in the 50s. They were all the rage, and then suddenly in the mid-60s, they just disappeared almost overnight. Nobody was going to them at all anymore. They used to be run similar to some comic books that I had when I was growing up, where you'd have two images. One would be in red and one would be in green or blue. And the way that we get stereo vision in our eyes is that your left eye is offset from your right eye by a little amount. And then when you look at things, focus. Right now, put a finger up next to your face, like really close in front of your eyes, and look at the screen that's playing this video. Focus now on the screen. You should see a double image of the finger because you're not focused on it, and you're seeing one image in each of the two eyes. Now, if you focus on the fingers and have them come together, the screen will have double vision. So that's part of stereo, is that we focus our depth on seeing how far apart are these two images when they're not actually being tracked. So that's how stereo vision works. And to fool our eyes into doing that on a 2D surface, we need to find a way to screen out one of these signals and make sure it only goes into one eye. So if I want this to go into my left eye, I would have on my left eye a blue filter. The red would pass through the blue would be caught by it and erased, so my left or my right eye would see this red image. I'd put a blue filter or a red filter on the left eye, and then I'd see the blue one. And these two I could then cross, and then the artist can simulate depth by how far apart they draw the double images at different planes of depth. For movies, this is also something you do. 2 images from 2 cameras, project both onto the screen at once, do one in red, one in blue. The red-blue filters, screen them out. There you got depth on the screen. My puzzle, why did they disappear? Because in the 60s, color TV came out. Now, who wants to go see a black and white movie, even if you can see it in 3D? This ultimately just vanished overnight. And it wasn't until kind of the mid-2000s that TV movies started to come back, and they came back with a vengeance. So what's a good way that we can project an image and retain the color information while we do it? Maybe you make glasses that have 2 different polarizations. The polarization doesn't care about color, right? So we can project a vertical and a horizontal image on the screen at once. The vertical image will pass through this one and be seen by this eye, the horizontal through this one, but not through each other. And we can simulate depth using something like this. There's a bit of a problem with horizontal and vertical, right? We're gonna have to clamp your head in place, right, with some bars and push plates to make sure you don't tilt left or right. You have to have perfect orientation. So really what we use is something called circular polarization, where we have clockwise and counterclockwise rotations, and that lets you kind of slouch a little bit and tilt over to the side and still be able to see the image. Next time you go to either a Real D or a Disney 3D film, just play around with the polarizing lenses, and if I'm thoughtful, I might go dig mine out and kind of show you the weird effects that they do.